Why does language matter so much when we're talking about food?
I'm Rachel Fine, registered dietitian nutritionist and founder of To The Point Nutrition. A dancer's performance is a direct result of hard work and motivation. So where does food fit into this? There's a lot of myths and a ton of antiquated ideals, and I'm here to dispel those.
Hi dancers, welcome back to Nutrition for Dancers with me, Rachel Fine, registered dietitian nutritionist. Today we're talking about something that might seem small, but it's actually one of the most powerful tools for improving your relationship with food. And that's the words you use to describe it. Yes, language. How we talk about food impacts how we feel about food. And for dancers, where diet culture often disguises itself as discipline or, and I quote, clean eating, these words can either enforce shame or fear, or they can help us build trust and a more eased relationship with food. So in today's discussion, I am walking you through a handful of common food-related phrases that often do more harm than good, and giving you some powerful language shifts that you can focus on instead. But before we dive in, don't forget to hit subscribe so you're first to know when I share new content. I'd also love for you to find me on Instagram because I share daily tips and advice multiple times a day, clarifying confusion and answering questions just like this one. So let's start with the big question. Why does language matter so much when we're talking about food? The short answer is that our words shape our experience. If you constantly label dessert as a guilty pleasure, then every time you eat it, even just a little bit, you are subconsciously layering guilt and shame onto what otherwise could be a joyful experience. And that guilt doesn't just stay in your mind. It even impacts how your body processes the moment. You might eat faster, you might feel more compulsive, or walk away from the meal feeling super stressed out and just out of control. But when you shift the language, when you remove morality from the way you talk about food, so we also call this building your food neutral lens, you start giving yourself permission to experience food in a more satisfying and even grounded way. This ultimately helps you feel more in control, more content, and also less reactive around meals. Let's walk through some of the biggest language shifts I recommend to dancers who are working to rebuild their relationships with food and just feel more at ease at mealtimes. So the first up, that's moderation. We've all heard it, right? Everything in moderation. Now the intention behind this phrase is totally understandable. It's trying to encourage balance. But in practice, moderation often creates a hidden rule. In other words, it implies a limit, a ceiling, something that we cannot or should not cross. And what happens when we feel restricted? We fixate, we overthink, and sometimes we overeat or we eat to a point past physical comfort. So instead of moderation, I encourage that dancers think about permission. Ask yourself, what would feel good to eat right now? What would leave me feeling nourished and satisfied? Also energized and focused. This approach invites you to start listening to your body's cues, not fight them. It gives you a sense of agency. And this is where true trust is built, not through rules, but through permission. Language shift number 2, guilt-free. You'll see this one all over food packaging or even recipe blogs. Lots of wellness marketing strung within it. Try this guilt-free dessert. But let me be clear, there should be no guilt when it comes to food. Ask yourself, did you steal this food or did you harm someone to get it? No? Then there's nothing to feel guilty about. Calling something guilt-free suggests that food should come alongside guilt, unless it's been modified to meet some arbitrary standard. So instead, try describing your food as enjoyable, satisfying, comforting, maybe even supportive. It helps to take the shame out of mealtime. Language shift number 3, this is a hard one. Healthy versus unhealthy. because this is big. Everyone categorizes food as being healthy versus non-healthy. But this thinking really oversimplifies something that's incredibly nuanced. Because what's considered healthy for one dancer at one specific moment in time might not necessarily be what's healthy for another dancer, or even the same dancer at a completely different moment in time. So let's say you're allergic to strawberries. Strawberries happen to be a really nutrient-dense food, chock full of vitamins and minerals. But strawberries are relatively the unhealthiest food, even a dangerous food for anybody to eat that might have an allergy to them. Get my point? Or let's say the only food that you have access to while on tour or while you're traveling to a competition is fast food. Then guess what? That kid's meal or whatever you're ordering, that's your healthiest choice in that moment because it provides your body with the energy and fuel it needs. So instead of labeling food in this way, healthy versus unhealthy, shift to something that's a bit more descriptive, even more complex. A few that I love: nourishing, energizing, satisfying, and like I said before, supportive of my needs at this moment. This helps you focus on how food functions in your life, not how it ranks on an arbitrary moral scale. The fourth language shift: toxic. Let's talk about the word toxic as it relates to food. Unless the food is spoiled or truly in a very harmful state, then it's not toxic. We often forget everything on this planet is made of chemicals. Even water, hydrogen, oxygen, guess what? Even apples. Formaldehyde, which sounds pretty scary, is, believe it or not, naturally found in very minute amounts in fruits and veggies. Now, dose matters here. Even water can be harmful in extreme amounts. What we want is variety. This helps us to encourage a varied, balanced intake over time. No one food is ever making or breaking your health or performance. So let's stop calling foods toxic. Instead, think about how all foods can fit within the overall overarching picture of your eating patterns in a day. The next language shift: addictive. Many dancers, time and time again, tell me that they feel addicted to sugar and carbs. What's even worse is a lot of this rhetoric is also pushed by well-intended nutrition enthusiasts in of themselves. I see it everywhere. So the feeling is valid, but the term addiction is extremely misleading, especially in the realm of food. Food is meant to bring us pleasure. That's part of the human experience. But when certain foods are restricted or thought to be off limits, like sugary foods, we tend to obsess over them. So if you feel addicted, now for the purpose of this discussion, I'm specifically talking about the feeling of addiction towards food or something like sugar, then it could be a clear sign you're not getting enough of it at baseline. And you've built this as being somewhat forbidden in your fuel plan. Now, instead of thinking addiction, ask yourself, do I have consistent access to this food? Like, let's just say, fun foods or a dessert? Am I giving myself permission to enjoy these foods regularly in my days and weeks and beyond? Also, am I eating enough just to feel satisfied and energized throughout my day? You'll often find that when permission increases or becomes easier for you around foods, that feeling of addiction around food also starts to subside. You'll often feel that the more you start to learn how to fuel your body adequately, eating enough each day, and also giving yourself permission to enjoy the foods that you love, that feeling of addiction will also simultaneously start to subside. The next language shifts we're focusing on: junk food and cheat meals. Oh, these are big ones. I want to pair the two together because they're quite similar. Both phrases suggest that some foods are inherently bad and that you are bad for eating them. Let's reframe that. Junk is a term that devalues food. Instead, why don't you refer to those foods as fun foods, comfort foods, or maybe even celebratory foods? And a cheat meal, that phrase really implies Food is part of this game that you're like trying to win, like trying to achieve the most perfect way of eating. And when you go against it, you're cheating. But mealtimes should never involve this level of deception and guilt. You are not cheating if you're enjoying a piece of cake or a burger. You're honoring your cravings. You're honoring what your body might need at that moment. Food is not a test. It's simply just nourishment. And last language shift I want you to consider is the term indulgence. Now, I'm not saying that you should never use this word. I use it all the time, but be mindful with how it makes you feel. Does saying I indulged in ice cream make it sound like you did something wrong? Because you surely didn't do anything wrong by enjoying some ice cream. Even if you had ice cream and you ate past a comfortable level of fullness, you still didn't do anything wrong. We can explore that deeper. Explore why that might have happened. Going back to some of those questions like, did I eat enough in my day? Am I giving myself permission to enjoy this food regularly? If this resonates, try changing your wording. Instead, say, I enjoyed ice cream today. I had something sweet and it hit the spot. This tiny shift, this is what helps continue to build that food neutral lens that I encourage all the time. Food is not a temptation to resist, I promise. It's an experience that you can savor. So let's recap with a few takeaways. Your words shape your relationship with food. Language like guilt-free, junk food, cheat days, and even indulgence oftentimes reinforce shame and even food scarcity. Like, we can't have this again anytime soon. By shifting towards permission and satisfaction, you start to soften the experience around food. It makes more room for having an eased relationship with it. And remember, there's no perfect way of eating. Eating better isn't about finding the healthiest, best, cleanest, most perfect food. It's about nurturing a more trusting, positive relationship with food. And this is exactly what we do within The Healthy Dancer. We start with compassion, speaking kindly to ourselves about the foods that we eat. I know it sounds a little silly, but it's so helpful. If this message hits home, highly encourage you reach out. I work with all dancers to help them do this exact work. We not only learn how to use food as a way to really fuel and optimize our performance, but we do so while also cultivating such a helpful, supportive relationship with it. And I know I can help you do the same. So subscribe so you're first to know when I share new content. Reach out. I'll share my email in just a bit. And go ahead, find me on Instagram. I'm sharing daily tips and advice, clarifying the misunderstandings of food, nutrition, body image, and so much more so that you can feel more confident both in the studio and out. Until next time, I'll talk to you soon.